Hello and welcome back to the Point Left podcast with your hosts,
Skyler
and Kaylynne.
First try.
We have been having some technical difficulties.
Like
hour? 45 minutes at least. So hopefully the audio sounds okay. If it doesn't, we are simply doing the best that we can. So I do apologize. But last night I went and saw Renfield.
Oh.
The new Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult, the two Nicholases.
Nikolai.
And I went with Nicholas, my mans.
Oh my god, your mans and Hannah's mans, who's also named Nick, can they become friends? I feel like I'm setting up a play date.
Yes.
Where it's like, can your boy and Hannah's boy be like best boys?
Just because they have the same name.
That's kind of all you need for a friendship between two guys, though.
I think
it's
so.
Something that small.
Yeah, and then they'll just gab and gib and gab and have a
whatever men do.
Whatever men do. I'm not sure. But I unfortunately had the same issue with Renfield that I had with John Wick.
The Wickening.
Where I neglected to realize that it would be so gory. It's really not that bad. I feel like it's not that bad for most people, but I just feel like maybe I'm like hypersensitive to that or whatever. But there was lots of like limbs being ripped off and like I just didn't think about it before going. So it was fine. It was, if you have an A-lister account, like go and see it. Otherwise, not sure I would recommend. Nick really liked it, but I wasn't the biggest fan. I thought some of the humor was kind of juvenile.
The power of the cage compels you.
Yeah, but it was, Nicolas Cage did have an accent, which I wasn't sure if it was just because of the giant
You thought he wouldn't?
Well, I knew he would. I knew our king would come through with an accent as Dracula. Can you roll your R's?
Dracula.
I'm so jealous.
Can you not?
No.
Oh, she's white.
Dracula. No, I can't.
Oh my god.
People have been trying to teach me my entire life. I can't do it.
You can't be Catwoman anymore.
No,
Kaylynne.
that was a reason, because when I went to high school, you could either take French, Japanese, or Spanish, and I specifically did not take Spanish because I could not roll my R's, and I'm like, they're going to flame me, and it's going to be a bad experience. People have tried to teach me over the years since birth practically, and I don't know why I can't do it. But guys, today, so I texted Skyler earlier. We were supposed to record earlier, and then I was like, hey, can we actually record at this time, because I have some chores I have to do around the house. And what chores did you have to do? Oh my god, thank you so much for asking. I know everyone was so curious. I'm kind of a plumber, guys.
What?
We have had, I don't know if you actually know this. Do you, our upstairs sink like does not drain?
Oh, no, I did not know this.
Oh, our upstairs sink didn't drain. It was very, very clogged up, and it like literally has been that way for months, and we have all just been too like, I don't even know if lazy is the right term. I just don't want to like bother our property manager with things that I feel like might be our fault.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? One of these days, I'm just gonna figure out how to declog it. It's fine. And I did. I watched a little YouTube video. I had to go under the sink, and I had to like do this little thingy, and I had to take this thing out, and I had to clean it, and I fucking did it. And guess what? It drains. But it was a little scary, because I was like, oh my god, I fixed it. Amazing, incredible. And then I ran the sink, and there was a leak. And I was like, no, I've made things worse. Now I'm going to have to go to my property manager and be like, hey, so we had this one issue that actually probably wasn't that big of a deal, that you could have fixed very easily. But then I tried to fix it myself, and now there's a larger issue that now you have to fix. But I did fix the leak as well. So call me for your plumbing needs.
It's giving the Mario Brothers. I want Luigi in a carnal way.
What?
I went and saw the Super Mario Brothers movie, and my only takeaway was I want Luigi. There's something about Charlie Day's voicing Luigi. I was getting bothered.
Do you not just want Charlie Day?
So, I don't know. My Letterboxd review is I want Luigi to redacted Luigi. Just to flex on the R rolling that you can't do.
That was not what I expected you to say. Oh my god.
Also, everyone's like, Chris Pratt deserves an apology from the internet about his accent. I'm like, why? Because he did the Mario voice kind of okay one time. Anyone can.
Yeah.
Chris Pratt voice doing, are you paying too much for plumbing? has been in my head for a minute.
I will say, I was one of the haters. I was one of the haters when the trailer came out, and I was like, why the fuck is Chris Pratt voicing this? I'm still a little like, why the fuck is Chris Pratt voicing this, to be completely honest?
No, you're right.
But I was very like, he doesn't even have an accent, like, what the fuck is this? But then I watched the movie, and they do explain, like, the accent a little, kind of.
Yeah.
And reflecting, I'm like, that makes sense, because I do think that the, like, it's me. Yeah, I think that would get a little ridiculous, like, in an hour and a half long movie to have to listen to that.
They've done it before. That's the thing, too. It's like, for me, if it would just be, like, because they've done the Super Mario movies before and, like, video games, whatever, I don't think it would be that annoying. But for me, Chris Pratt can't decide whether or not he wants to be, like, do a typical Brooklyn accent or an Italian accent, or if he wants to be, like, when he's in the Mushroom Kingdom for the first time, he just goes, Mario, and I'm like, Chris, you didn't even try.
Christopher.
Especially when he's next to Jack Black, who's putting his whole, like, Jablissi.
Jack Black killed it. What's the song?
Peaches, 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 peaches. We know what he's talking about.
I love
this peach doesn't have lips.
Who's the other? I literally the entire. Sorry,
Good. Please cut me off. I was about to go gross.
I, for the life of me, could not remember what's the name of the orange princess.
Daisy.
Daisy. That's what it was. Who was your, like, go-to for Super Mario Kart? Toad. Interesting. I was always Daisy. I was like, because I'm a princess, but I'm a brunette.
I like Toad.
Or I was Yoshi.
The androgynous nature of Toad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those who were like, what's my gender? They picked Toad as a kid. What gender is Toad? Toad's Toad. What's a Toad? That Toad.
Why do they
What pronouns do you use for Toad? That's Toad.
They, them.
Toad uses they, them pronouns.
I'm like, why? I never understood why Toad was named Toad, because it's like a little mushroom.
No. It's kind of like, for me, he's called Toad because they are toads. The same way that, like, Winnie the Pooh is named the way, because he's a Pooh Bear. So they're just calling him, like... Oh. Technically, Winnie the Pooh's name is Winnie. Isn't that crazy?
Oh, Winnie.
Like Winnie. Winifred the Pooh Bear.
Winifred.
Winifred the Pooh Bear is his government name.
Okay, guys, I know you were all waiting. So remember last episode where I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to do a beverage of the episode. I'm doing it. I don't care what anyone thinks. It's a fun little thing for me to do. And if you know me, I'm a bevy girl through and through. We've been through this. But today I'm trying a new kombucha. It's blood orange, carrot, and ginger by Health-Ade, and I really like this this company. They usually have good stuff. They have a passion fruit one that I love.
You and passion fruit. I think passion fruit tastes like armpits.
I know. I'm like, a lot of people don't love passion fruit. Ugh, I love it. Okay, here's a little. Ooh.
I was like, remember when the other one exploded?
Yeah, last time when I was trying that recess drink, luckily I opened it, like, before we started recording, because it did explode. So that would have been a fun little thing to have on camera. But I did have to run to the sink really quickly. Yeah, let's see. Okay.
Thoughts? That looks like a potion. Like, the bottle is very potion shaped.
I know, it does seem very potion-y.
That's that.
It's fine. It's not my favorite. I don't know if I would repurchase. But it's not bad. Like, it's not bad. It's a kombucha.
We got a mid-booch. Right as she was about to swallow. That's how you get them.
A mid-cum. I saw you try and save it. But you already said it. It was too late. A mid-cum. Okay, actually, the second taste was better.
You're gaslighting yourself.
That's all it was. I think it's because
it's giving Stockholm.
I got too much like bubbles in the first one, carbonation.
Yeah, and that'll mask the flavor.
Also, we're doing something a little bit different, I think, with the rest of our episodes, because I was spiraling the other day, and I was just like, I don't have time to make, like, quality episodes, and I want to put quality episodes out. So we're starting a new format. where each episode, one of us is going to kind of lead. That way we have like 2 weeks to kind of research and stuff. Because I don't know if you guys could tell in the last episode, I like was not well researched at all. Hence all the like webcam interruptions where I was like, hey guys, so this was actually incorrect. So this episode, Skyler is leading. So take it away.
Oh my gosh. All right, so I told you a little bit, oh my fucking God. I told you this a little bit before we started recording, but this concept is it's a problem that I personally had to deal with, and that's the idea of separating the art from the artist. We're going to definitely go into that a little bit later, but it stems from this idea, and some people use this interchangeably, of this theory called death of the author. And I think it's a really interesting, fascinating literary theory, so I'm going to play like a little bit of like a teacher-student moment, teach you what this is, because you said you didn't know. So the first time I heard about this, it was because people were wanting to use the death of the author principle when it comes to Joanne Rowling. And
the Joanne,
I will call her by her government name, just as she wants everyone to do for everyone else. And so one of the Joanne fans then messaged that creator of that original video explaining what that is, and because they thought death of the author meant that the video essayist was literally calling for people to kill J.K. Rowling.
Oh.
They're like, that is not what... Death of the author does not mean we are wishing death upon the actual author. We are not using death threats. It's just it's a literary concept. So the phrase death of the author comes from a 1967 essay by they're always French, literary critic and theorist Roland Barthes. And Barthes' essay argues against traditional literary criticisms of the time because they had this practice of relying on the intentions and biography of an author to definitively explain the ultimate meaning of a text. And instead, he said we should emphasize each individual's reader interpretation of the work over any quote-unquote definitive meaning intended by the author. Basically, it's a literary theory that says that things like who the author was, what time period they lived in, the details about their lives add no relevant context. Like, you shouldn't need to know anything about the author. In fact, the best way to engage with a text is to know nothing. Is to basically have the author be anonymous. So were you in AP Lit when you were in high school?
Yeah.
So did you read Animal Farm?
Yes.
So, like, before you read Animal Farm, you got, like, an entire lesson on the history of communism before you read it, just so you know who Stalin, who Lenin was. Or, like, sometimes some kids read Macbeth, and, like, before you read Macbeth, you learn about Shakespeare's personal relationship to the monarchy, the historical views, how he would have felt about war, and, like, you know, all of his direct, like, things in his life that would bleed into his own writing. And Death of the Authors basically just says that all of that context is unnecessary and that the work is just free floating out there, untethered to a creator. It just is. When it was made and who made it are not important at all to the actual body of work itself. And I disagree, but I would like to know your thoughts on that concept just as a concept.
Interesting. I'm going to come from this from like a script writing perspective, because this is actually something that I feel, but I'm like, now I'm kind of like changing my thoughts. Oh my God, who would have guessed? It's a nuanced topic. Crazy.
Bitches hate nuance.
I know. But, I have always kind of been a firm believer that like you should not require context for a movie. Like the script should be able to like provide you context in order for it to be like well written. Because there are a lot of things where like and like obviously this isn't like if it's a sequel or something.
Yeah.
I'm saying if it's like a standalone movie, and I fucking hate when people sorry, I feel like I'm swearing a lot. But
do you know the fuck you are talking to?
I just said like it's so much in one sentence. Okay, anyway. But I feel like so many film bros will be like, no, you don't get it. Like, it's because of this, and this. And I'm like, okay, but that wasn't, like, explained in the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the movie. And if I didn't get it, frankly, I don't think that's a reflection of, like, me. I think that's a reflection of the filmmaker not, like, giving enough context or not being like well written enough to have made me understand it because you're supposed to like create the world, right? But that's coming from like a like fictional. Well, I guess this is a fictional standpoint as well.
Oh, most of Death of the Author, it stems from literary works, but you can apply this type of theory to other things. So feel free to do that.
Okay.
Which is like a lot of the language that they use refers to like books.
That makes sense.
Literature.
That makes sense. But for example, like something like Animal Farm, like I think it is really important to have that context of like the time period and like the things that it's referencing and things like that, to have like that background knowledge does make it a more like in-depth read, I guess. Or I think you're able to grasp more from the writing with that knowledge and that context. But at the same time, I do think it is the author's responsibility to provide that context like within the writing. But when it comes to like the personal lives of authors, it is difficult to make that separation because you are giving financial power to that author. I think of Kanye West, for example.
Oh, we're going to get into both of those. Don't you fret. Yeah. We are going to get into those. Don't think I didn't forget about Kanye or Joanne.
Where it's like there's things like that where it's like, no, like the artist is as important as the art that they create, because unless you're like illegally downloading or anything like that, and even then, like, I don't know, like if you're a Kanye stan or whatever and you're playing, you know, and you're playing music around your friends, or, you know, you're giving streams on Spotify and things like that, like, but you're like, oh, you know, I don't agree with him as a person, but like I like his music, like I enjoy his music, you are supporting him. Yep. You are inherently supporting him because you are financially supporting him and because you are like spreading his word and like all of these things. So in things like that where like I have a moral like disruption, I don't know what the phrasing I'm trying to find.
You
like,
have a moral like responsibility qualm? or a moral qualm.
Yeah, like a moral qualm with the artist or the
qualm
author.
Is such a funny word.
I love that word. Then I think it is important to like you can't separate the two. You can't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, yeah. So literally, I know, like I said the other day, that Little Women I think is fun because like knowing that Louisa May Alcott was rumored to have been a lesbian and she saw so much of herself in Jo does lend as you read Jo with new subtext. And like you can read all of Twilight without knowing that Stephenie Meyer is Mormon and you won't miss out on anything. But once you find out that Stephenie Meyer is Mormon, Twilight makes a lot more sense. There are 3 my favorite little facts. So there's a scene in the Twilight books where Bella pulls her hair up in a ponytail, wears like a long sleeve blue shirt and a floor-length khaki skirt. And Edward literally growls in her ear being like, "You are the sexiest that you've ever looked." You can just read that. Knowing she's Mormon, funnier. There's a scene where they're like, "We have to stop Edward before he exposes himself and gets himself killed." And she's like, "I've been up for hours, God, and I chugged my 11th Diet Coke." And you're like, "Why can't you just drink coffee?"
Interesting.
And then they were like, "I won't touch you until we're married." The pro-life thing. The fact that
I did not know that she was Mormon until this moment.
And I'm like, oh my God, Volturi are just Catholics. They're literally in Rome. They have like the vibes of everything. They have like blood sacrifices to keep themselves in power. The racism, like he's like, we can't have sex until we get married because then I'm gonna go to hell. Edward, you're immortal. I know. And I think genuinely, like as a writer, I disagree with the idea because it's a fun thought exercise, but like, if I'm writing something, all of my influences are going to be in it. Just because I wrote something doesn't mean it just like
exists.
Every like my personal beliefs, my writing style, the world around me, it impacts my stuff, and it's kind of naive to think that you can just separate it like that. And also, like, I feel like that'll be an increasingly more and more unpopular idea because we want our media to be authentic. Like, it would be nice to know if the story about a Latina lesbian was written by a white guy. You know what I mean? Where it's like, in that case, I think it is important to know, like, not that you need to know the author's entire life story, but you could be like, this author moved to Guam and learned from the people there, and you can be like, oh, okay, cool, I can see that, like, instead of just like someone, not necessarily that you need to prove your credentials to write anything, but I think that is going to be a more and more popular method of knowing where our stuff comes from, is knowing if all these fun facts about the person who made it. And there's like another category of death of the author, that the writer isn't the authority on what they made. like people will go up to authors or scriptwriters at cons or like, you know, creators of TV shows and just be like, what happens next? Like, can you confirm my headcanon? Like they think that the creator's opinion holds a higher legitimacy than your average fan. And so this subset of Death of the Author disagrees with that. And one of the biggest proponents of this idea is actually John Green. John Green, The Fault in Our Stars man himself, he has 3 quotes. He goes, I know that books seem like the ultimate thing that's made by one person, but that's not true. Every reading of a book is a collaboration between the reader and the writer who are making the story up together. They belong to their readers now, which is a great thing because the books are more powerful in the hands of my readers than they could ever be in my hands. Basically saying that the fan or like the reader or whoever takes in the work, make more noise outside, whoever takes in the work has just as much of a right to take the story or say what it is or isn't about than the actual creator does. The story is entirely out of the writer's control once they're done finishing it. His books mean whatever you think they mean. He has no say. So basically, if right now I'm like, the Bible is gay fan fiction because I said so, I'm just as legitimate as actual Bible scholars, as priests, as anyone, because I read it that way. So that's what the story means because that's what I say that it means. Thoughts?
I think that's really interesting because I think similarly to Mr. Green. We have a lot in common.
Yeah, books belong to their readers.
He's also in Indiana.
No way!
Yeah, he is. Anyway, I think I agree with that to a certain extent. And I like went through when I was in like my film bro phase in high school, which I'm like still a little bit in, but I try to be less like annoying about it. I was very like into like films with like ambiguous endings, and I loved things that like could have multiple interpretations, because I think it does create a stronger relationship like between the viewer or the reader and the piece of work, and I agree with what he's saying to the extent of like, if you're a writer or an artist or whatever, once your work is out there, you have no control over how it is going to be interpreted.
Yeah.
And
interpreted.
Interpreted. Oh my god.
Twitter-pated.
Guys. Interpreted. I said it and I was like, that's not right.
You're like, am I really smart? And I'm like, no.
Interpreted. You have no control over how it's going to be interpreted. And because of that, I think as an author or an artist or whatever, you do have to give up some of that control. And I actually really appreciate that him as an author is aware of that and is like encouraging of it, because I think there are a lot of artists who are like obviously very protective over their work. And then one person will say something like, oh yeah, I thought it was really interesting because of this, and this. And like, I thought that there are motivations behind this. And then like the artist will get defensive about it because they're like, well, that's not what I intended. Like, that's not what I meant. But it's like, it's out of your control at a certain extent.
You can't go back and rewrite it.
Exactly.
I mean, you could, but you can't.
Yeah. So I honestly, I would say I agree with that.
No, the death of the author as a literary concept is one of those things that can really only work in theory, because what they're like, basically they say later on that once you learn subtext, you can't unlearn it. So like you would, unless you're literally buying a book, it's like the cover is blank. You have no idea what it's titled. You have no idea who wrote it. You just read the book as it is and don't tell anyone about it. Then you can practice death of the author, because at that point you have no idea anything about the author's life, their influences, who they were, what type of evil person they were, how they thought about the world, who cares. But the second you're like, hey, I read this book, and they're like, oh my gosh, I love that author. Did you hear that she like, you know, was Dutch for a period of time? Okay, well then that's already the theory of death of the author has been ruined, because now you have some information about the author that you didn't have previously, that you look back and you're like, oh, I can see the influences. Yeah. You know, like, so it's one of those things where like it really only works in theory, almost never in practice. You really have to, like, the existence of book clubs would kill the idea of death of the author. And the meaning that this phrase death of the author has been bastardized in modern fandom to basically be like interchangeable with the phrase separate art from the artist. And it's kind of like that, but kind of not, you know what I mean? Like death of the author is basically just being like, the author itself should like doesn't really matter when it comes to what's on the page, and separate art from the artist is kind of saying that, but people say separate art from the artist because they want to absolve themselves of guilt when the creator of their favorite thing they made turns out to be a garbage person. Like, quick, how can I consume the things I love without feeling bad that I'm supporting a monster who only has a platform because people like me refuse to deplatform them? A huge example of an author deep in this conversation that always is brought up is H.G. Wells. He was a brilliant writer with so much impact on the world of science fiction, of literature, who just happened to be also one of the most racist people alive. He was racist towards people I didn't even think you could be racist towards. It was incredible. Like, do you separate him from his work? And, like, there's a lot of subtext in his stuff about the fear of the other, of being replaced, the fear of the unknown. And, like, once you have that voice in the back of your head, it's kind of hard to not see the influences of, like, a very, you know, racist British man thinking about the world when you read his stuff. It's kind of hard to unsee the subtext once you know about it. And so that's mostly we've been talking in like the literary sphere. For film, where there's hundreds of people involved, you know, different viewpoints for how the story is going to come together, from the director to the cinematographer, the composer, it's hard to pin like one entire movie all on one person, right? So be like, it's hard to be like one person's vision because film is inherently a collaborative media. It's harder when they like bank on that name and then it's like a Roman Polanski feature and you're like, damn it! Or it's like produced by Harvey Weinstein. You're like, no! And when their name is all over it, then you can be like, ooh, this is just them. But for film, there's more of a conversation. It's a gray area. Like, yeah, did you see that movie? Yeah, but the lead actor has a sexual assault case against them, or the producer has been like is going to jail for like whatever, and the director is a piece of shit who fled to Spain. Like, but it's there's more I can think of like a conversation that can be had between like a film where there's like, you know, hundreds of people come together to make one thing. It's kind of, it seemed, you know, unfair to pin a lot of blame on that one particular thing on just one person. But for authors writing a book, that is them. That was just them, their brains, and like their agent, their publisher, their editors, they can give notes, they can give suggestions, but at the end of the day, it is just them coming up with most of it. I feel like music is a similarly, I mean, like music is still a collaborative process, obviously, but I feel like there's way more, the scales tip more towards the artist than like the producer, than like the, yeah. Whoever, especially if you look at the credits for songwriting and it's like, melody, lyrics, composition all by one person, you'd be like, oh, that's their stuff. Yeah, it's different if, you know, if they're a band, or if, you know, they're just like a Justin Bieber song where like he may sing it, but he didn't write it, he didn't produce it, he didn't edit it, he didn't, you know, shout out the rap verse at the end. Like, it's a little different. Who gets the money, who gets the credit.
That's the thing that gets me is like who is getting the money, because like I don't know, I think of like for actors like Kevin Spacey. I personally like I'm not gonna go out of my way to watch a Kevin Spacey movie, but like if he's in a movie, like I don't really feel a lot of moral guilt watching it because he's already made the money off the movie. And like there might be residuals, but like for film that's not really a thing. And like even with like Netflix residuals fucking suck. Like like I'm not super concerned with like something like that, for example. Obviously if it's like a new movie with Kevin Spacey, like I'm not gonna go and watch it. But if it's something that's like been around and like he already got his check for that, you know, like it's not,
I think at the most you watch it and you go, ooh, like, and you go like tug your collar.
Well, and again, it's such a collaborative thing. Like it's not like it's a one-man show. Like there are other actors in it, there are other creators, there are other writers and directors, and like, you know, things like that. But with music, you are getting residuals off of that song with every single listen. And I do think the residual, I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but like the residual model with like Spotify and like Apple Music and things like that is something that like a lot of artists complain about because you're not getting as much as when like iTunes was a bigger thing. But like you are still getting money off of every single play. So for me, musicians, it's a lot harder to like, that's a lot harder of a pill to swallow, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, it's even harder when like the creator of the thing that like, you know, a lot of the credit for it is being pinned on them turns into a bigoted nightmare. It's almost impossible to not like go back and see like the seedlings of where these hateful ideas even spouted. Okay, one of the big elephants in the room is J.K. Rowling. I have to go into it because I was talking with someone recently and they're like, yeah, I know she's a TERF, but like as far as I know, she just like liked some tweets and that's what we're all getting upset about. And I think that's how it started. Around 2019, Joanne was on Twitter just like seemingly like liking some pretty hardcore transphobic stuff, but like old people have fat thumbs, you know, and she seemed to like unlike them pretty soon after. And so a lot of people chalked that up to a mistake and then she started like retweeting things, right? And so I think that's one of the point when people like either started and ended their like research into how off the deep end she's gone. And even I was like, okay, literally what has she done? She might have been bitchy and annoying on Twitter. Who isn't? You know, frankly, like what else has she done? So there's a timeline. It keeps getting worse because I feel like the more vague people are about like, and I'm just going to really go into Joanne because like I have more of a personal relationship with her because and I'll go a little bit into more of like creators that I have to work around. But I know J.K. Rowling the best, unfortunately. So
she's a close and personal friend.
I would die. I would kill myself. No, so I feel like if the more vague we are about her, we're more like, yeah, she's a bad person. The more people are like, okay. I feel like if you give examples, then you really are like, there's no excuse for this. So come along with me as I go through a timeline of this one woman's descent into madness.
I'm strapping in because honestly, I really don't know that much.
Okay.
I just know.
So around 2020, she had liked a couple things, retweeted a couple things, outwardly voiced her support for one woman who was starting up a big case in the UK because she got fired for being transphobic. And J.K. Rowling was like, what did she do wrong? And so already people were like, careful, Joanne. Like, that might, like, people were already mad at her, pissed off with her. But it really got off the deep end. Around 2020, she released an essay, basically a one-woman stand against trans movement in general, and it's just one giant essay of like misrepresented data, like please, like we need to think of the children, inclusive language is anti-woman, the whole trans movement is just all misogyny, I was attacked once and now all these trans people are making me feel like I'm going to be attacked again, why is Twitter mad at me? She's like, a quote, many health professionals are concerned that young people struggling with their mental health are being shunted towards hormones and surgery when this may not be in their best interests. Many, myself included, believe we are watching a new kind of conversion therapy for young gay people who are being set on a lifelong path of medicalization, which so many things to unpack of why that is bullshit. But number one, I don't know what it is in the UK, but I doubt it's much different than the US. Doctors aren't just like, you get hormones. You get hormones. Every trans person I've ever heard or talked to has talked about how difficult it is to get anyone to even believe them, much less the fact that doctors were like just throwing them. Like doctors will throw you Lexapro. Doctors will throw you, if you have a problem with your skin, it's straight to, why can't I think of it right now?
Oh my god, I can't think of it either.
You know what I'm thinking of?
Yeah, the like intense acne pill. Accutane.
Yes. There will be things that doctors will just throw at you. Hormones and gender assignment surgery are not one of them. No. On September 14th, 2020, her book Troubled Blood sparked yet another round of, I got all this from a CNN article, sparked another round of outrage after an early review began making the rounds. The book follows a detective on the hunt for a cis male serial killer who dresses as a woman to gain access to women's spaces to hunt and murder cis women. The Telegraph's review describes it as, quote, a book whose moral seems to be never trust a man in a dress. Dave Chappelle defended her, which...
Oh, good. I'm going to trust Dave Chappelle's opinion. Yeah.
In December of 2021, in another controversial tweet, Rowling shares an article from the Times of London about, quote, the absurdity. So basically, the police in Scotland were like, hey, if we have rapists on file, we will put it as a woman if they identify that way. That's all they put. Joanne tweeted, she quoted 1984, which if you already know, if anyone quotes 1984, they're going to say the most stupid bullshit that you've ever fucking heard in your life. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. The penis individual who raped you was a woman. March 2022, Rowling criticizes a bill that would make legally changing gender even easier. And a few days later, on International Women's Day, she tweeted, today will become We Who Must Not Be Named Day. In August of 2022, she began promoting her new novel, The Ink Black Heart, published under her pen name Robert Galbraith. In the book, which is over 1,000 pages long, A YouTube-based cartoonist work is accused of being racist, transphobic, and ableist. She's then doxxed, threatened with rape and death, and is ultimately stabbed to death in a cemetery. It's a book that takes aim at social justice warriors who get mad at an author who they believe is doing something wrong. And most recently, Rowling compares trans rights movement to Death Eaters. In episode 5 of the podcast, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling, the author describes the trans movement as dangerous. Here's an excerpt. Some of you have not understood the books. The Death Eaters claimed, "We have been made to live in secret, and now is our time, and any who stand in our way must be destroyed. If you disagree with us, you must die." They demonized and dehumanized those who were not like them. I am fighting what I see as a powerful, insidious, misogynistic movement that has gained huge purchase in a very influential areas of society. I do not see this particular movement as either benign or powerless, so I'm afraid I stand with the women who are fighting to be heard against threats of loss of livelihood and threats to their safety. So if you don't know, Death Eaters were her idea of what Nazis were. So in her new mind, that's that. So already, we've reached the end of our timeline. That was very recent. That was March of 2023. That was last month. She said that.
Joanne.
So it's more than just like going off the deep end, whatever. And
I have to
please
stop real quick. What a fucking ego you have to publish a 1,000-page novel.
Fan fiction about if someone came and killed you.
Like, that's just I feel like that's what gets me. If you don't know, I feel like I've talked about it on the pod before, but I have like a 2-hour limit for movies. And if a movie is over 2 hours, it has to be damn fucking good. And it has to earn those extra minutes after the 2 hours. Because I wasted so much time watching 3-hour movies that fucking suck. That could have had an hour taken off. Anyway, that's my whole thing. But it's like, you are going to write 1,000 pages that is basically like a fan fiction about your own life and publish it and be like, yes, people are going to love this. People are going to read this. Who has time? What? Who has time to read 1,000 pages? Like, I understand there are a lot of very long, very great books that like people love, but that takes an ego.
Which she does have. No. So yeah, obviously this like, and if this was just an author, you know, like just a children's author going off her deep end, you could be like, okay, that's really disappointing. We will unpack that later. But at the end of the day, it's just an author. Wrong. So she has become one of the largest global anti-trans voices, painting everyone who disagrees with her as a trans reactionary terrorist. And in fact, the Pink News reports in 2021, that J.K. Rowling and anti-trans rhetoric have caused, quote, significant damage to the UK and international LGBTQ reports. So apparently in the UK, turfdom, which if you don't know the turf, it's not a slur. I wish it was. I'm going to use it as one. It's an acronym for trans exclusionary radical feminist. Basically, I hate trans people because I love women. And it's like, break your bones. So apparently turfiness is way more of a thing over in the UK than it is there. But basically, like, her power and her influence is so large because, like, your average everyday person, you're like, oh, J.K. Rowling, I know that voice. She's way more famous and way more powerful than the, like, average lived lives of trans people that, you know, are just people, may not be, like, someone you personally disagree with because they're just a person. But yeah, it's, like you were saying earlier, it's very hard to separate, you know, there's a difference between, like, a dead creator, right, who's been dead for 50 years with a checkered past, and you can just be like, product of the time, like, you can do whatever mental gymnastics you need to do to read a really good book that has, like, problematic elements because it was published in 1910, you know what I mean? Or, like, this creator, this author has a checkered past.
Well, it's like you can have enough critical thinking to, like, unpack those parts of it and, you know, dig deeper, but, sorry.
Yeah, but a living creator who is alive, actively profiting from it, using their wealth and power to actively advocate against marginalized groups, it's way harder to do that. And I was like, yeah, I got J.K. Rowling, I got Kanye, and Melanie Martinez is a little bit... J.K. and Kanye are in their own sphere because I feel like for most of the separate art from the artist, it's just like my artist came out as like someone who might have done bad things who aren't good. Joanne and Kanye are like actively trying to silence and hurt people, but Melanie Martinez, are you familiar?
I think so, yeah, with like her friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there was this widespread rumor that like the person so Melanie Martinez was accused of raping her best friend, and there was a widespread internet rumor that went around that like the friend confirmed that it was all fake, and everyone just kind of went back to being like, yay, Melanie is freed. That never happened. The confession was a photoshopped image that was spread, and in fact, because I'm like, whatever, so many popular artists get accused of sexual assault and racism and battery all the time, and all they have to, like fucking Chris Brown, they just have to sit there and wait for it all to go away because you deny it vehemently. But Melanie, how can she, like, everyone's like, yay, she's innocent, Melanie Martinez is innocent party, and I'm like, she admitted it. She admitted to doing it on Twitter. She admitted it. But yeah, and that's another like artist, but it's different for artists like, you know, Joanne and Kanye. Like you're saying, they're so wrapped up in the things that they make. It's almost impossible to divorce the two. Like Graduation is Kanye. No one else could have made that. It's so much of like his own life, his own experiences, his own like beliefs that you like, they are entwined. And Joanne has made very careful work for like the past decade to put herself in the world of Harry Potter more than your average author does, to the point where like Harry Potter is J.K. Rowling, like, and she's made herself very prominent and important in all of that, which is probably why they're so emboldened to say the shit that they say, because they know their fans will have a hard time letting them go.
Yeah,
like, you can't get mad at him, he made Graduate so
who cares?
And if I was J.K. Rowling, I would just be like, if I have these genuine like beliefs, and so I like, you know, I dip my toe in the water. I like a couple of like problematic things. And people get mad, right? But then more people don't get mad. And then my money doesn't go away.
Yeah.
And so then I say something a little bit more, and then I couldn't help but notice that none of my money goes away. And then she's like welcomed with open arms by these like very enthusiastic group of people who are so glad to have someone as like huge as J.K. Rowling on their side, that she's like falls into this group of people that's only going to get more and more secular and more like isolated from your average person and more extreme as the time goes on. I don't think J.K. Rowling's going to like have a redemption arc anytime soon, where she's like, guys, I was wrong. I realize now that I'm wrong. Like, even like turfiness in the UK is like a genuine problem, and there was one like quote unquote protest where basically a couple of like cis women were like, down with trans people, and someone got hit with a can of soup. I don't even, not a can, because that's like a thing, but I think someone like poured soup on her, and J.K. Rowling was basically like liking tweets that only made it out to be like a fucking ambush, and like,
oh my god,
yeah.
Well, and something I was thinking earlier too, when you were mentioning like authors that like literally are dead and have had like checkered past and stuff, it's like, you know, everything that they've done, you know, every like problematic thing that they've said, or every you know, everything that they've done. With people who are still alive,
it could get worse.
Exactly. It's like, you don't know what their next step is going to be, you don't know what the next thing they're going to say is, you don't know the next movement they're going to lead. Like, that's when it gets very troublesome. And I mean, obviously it's already troublesome enough to like have these like opinions and views, and like to have this influence over so many people. I think that's the biggest thing, is like, we all know that Kanye has influence, and that he is influencing thousands, millions of like mostly men to like follow him and to believe these certain beliefs, and to you know, admire the other people who he raises a platform for. And it's like, you don't know what is going to happen next. And I think especially since like it's happening now, we can see like the immediate impact that these people are having. And you're so right. It's like, if they're going to say these things without any consequence. And so many people, I feel like so many people are like, well, it's just words, it's just what they're saying. And it's like, no, you know, if this was like your average fucking like grocery store clerk with like 4 friends, like, I mean, like, obviously still a piece of shit, but like, you know, not that big of an influence. They're not gonna like impact that many people in their day-to-day lives. But these people who have these giant platforms that are not being deplatformed anytime soon are continually saying these things and influencing these people to believe certain ideologies that are harmful, that are literally harmful to people's lives. Like that, it's just such a big issue, and it infuriates me so much, because I feel like, especially with Kanye, I haven't heard that many people defending J.K. Rowling. Like, I feel like just our general like friend group is just like, oh, J.K. Rowling sucks.
Yeah.
But like with Kanye, I feel like I could name a couple people in my head who like are Kanye supporters, and they're like, yeah, like he's done some fucked up things, and like I don't agree with his beliefs, but like his music is so good, and it's like, bro, get a fucking grip. Get a fucking grip and find someone else. Find someone else. And you know what? If you already own CDs, if you already bought the music on iTunes and you really like it that much, whatever, listen to it, it's fine. But like, don't stream him, don't follow him, don't like actively be like, oh my god, he's the best artist, he's a fucking genius. Like don't actively support him. That's what gets me. Sorry.
Yeah. No, my mom got me a ton of Jeffree Star makeup. Am I gonna go full like conservative and start burning that shit?
Yeah.
That's just
Oh my
it's
God.
mine already.
I own the Shane Dawson palette. Guys, I'm sorry. But it's like,
Yeah, like destroying it. What is that? The money's already
I'm
given.
like, they already have the fucking money. What am I gonna do? You
That's
know?
why I have like my Jeffree Star mirror and like you know
Yeah.
a couple of his glosses, but yeah, like how do you reconcile that fact that this creator made something so formative, so important, so personal to you that you love, and also the fact that the creator is a terrible person who thrives on your money and attention? How do you compartmentalize those two ideas? Because once you see it, it's so hard to unsee it. Like once I saw like the little tittering of gross shit in Harry Potter and the fucking annoying way that she writes accents verbatim on the page, so I had to say them out loud to understand what she was trying to say, like those word games that you have to like put on your forehead and be like, oh, that's what the saying is. I had to do that with her shit. Her world building is flimsy. Her like writing style isn't that great. I can't unsee that. And like, so you can control the way that you interact with anything, but you have no control over what the creator does with their influence, what they believe. And that can seem unfair. Like suddenly this thing that means so much to me is ruined because this person who made it decided to go full Nazi. And if I engage with them at all, I'm saying with my wallet and my internet presence and making what goes trending and what goes streaming numbers, whatever, that I encourage this, that I agree. And you're right, that's not fair. Like, if it sounds like when I'm describing J.K. Rowling, if it sounds like I'm angry and bitter, it's because I fucking am. My first Tumblr handle was J.K. Rowling is Jesus. I idolized this woman. I thought that she was the greatest thing ever. And to just, like, literally, her stupidity ruined it for me. And I know you're probably sitting there like, that's not, like, you shouldn't let just one person's words, you know, like, ruin how you view something. But, like, it's like a film that covers over everything. It's like the nostalgia goggles have been ripped off and suddenly I can see all the flaws that I didn't see there before. And you could go full John Green, right? You could go like, no, it's out of her hands now. The work belongs to us. And it kind of does, but it also kind of doesn't. Like the only way that I've been navigating this so far, and the only advice that I have, because it's a nuanced topic and I have no answers. Like I'm not about to be like whatever, is to become an invisible fan. Like, if you want to read Harry Potter, there are, like, go to a Goodwill right now. They have the entire series for $2.50. That money will not go to JK. That money will go to Goodwill. Not great also, but, like, it's not Joanne. And you can still interact and read them. I mean, if you want to, completely, like, removed and you just choose to not care. But then there's, like, and same with, like, you know, I still listen to occasionally some Melanie Martinez music because I illegally downloaded her album 5 years ago when I was in high school. Oh my God, was I in high school 5 years ago? No, I wasn't. I'm going to throw up. When I was in high school, however many years ago that was. And so she doesn't get any of my streaming numbers. She doesn't get, like, any of my money. But that's, like, bare minimum. If you talk about them on the internet, remember what, like, I said earlier in, like, another podcast episode that the more we're going into a streaming world, the more we're going into, like, a world that's fully online. A lot of, higher ups will see if something is trending on Twitter, or if something is getting a lot of online engagement that's just as important to them as, you know, like streaming numbers, viewing numbers, whatever. And so even just like making J.K. Rowling trending is giving, like, they're like, oh, she's a hot button whatever, she's a hot button topic. Even if, like, you're silent and you buy, like, secondhand Harry Potter merch, like, you don't buy the merch directly from Target, but you were scrolling through the thrift store and you found this, like, t-shirt that, like, has Hogwarts on it, and, like, whatever, if you engage with fandom secondhand, if you, like, completely remove yourself from the equation, and, like, if you still talk about it in fan spaces, they see that you're like, still engaging with the fork on Tumblr, and you're making it in Twitter, Instagram, you're making it relevant to the point where, like, game devs will be like, oh, people still really enjoy Hogwarts, let's make a giant video game about it. Oh, people still really care about Hogwarts, well, let's reboot the entire fucking thing with J.K. Rowling as executive producer. So even, like, which is such a, it should just tell you honestly how angry I am, because as a kid, that's all I wanted. I wanted them, because I hated the movies. Because as a kid, all that matters is book accuracy. You don't know anything about, like, pacing or, like, score or, like, set design or acting even. You care, is it direct, like, from the book to the screen? And all I said that I wanted for years was I wanted someone to make, like, a book to season TV show following the books exactly. And I'm getting what I want now. And I'm like, I don't fucking want it. I went to the Universal Studios, and the first time I went, I cried because I'm like, oh my God, it's real. And, like, I was, like, 14 and I was sobbing, and I got my little wand and I got my little whatever. And I went back recently and I'm like, yeah, this is fine. Can we go to Jurassic? But, like, I'm angry that someone who I have never met has ruined something for me. And I think it's just it is unfair. But I think, in my opinion, part of adulthood is understanding that your idols or the people that you look up to, like your parents even, or your family members, people that you look up to, they can't all be good. And trying to, like, force yourself into that childlike wonder and love for a franchise is neglecting the responsible thing of being an informed consumer, of knowing where your money goes. You can, like, I guess, just, like, plug your ears and close your eyes all you want and just, like, blindfoldedly give these people your money and, like, try not to worry about that. But there's no situation now where you can be guilt-free. The creator put the guilt there. What you do with it now says more about you than it says about them. So, like, it's either going to become a guilty pleasure one way or another. It's either a guilty pleasure that you keep to yourself, or it's a guilty pleasure that you just tell people. But the guilt is not going to go away. That's the unfair part, and that's the part that you can get mad about the creator. All you want is to be like, you asshole! Why are you, like, continually ruining this for me? Every time I go online, the creator, my favorite singer, my favorite author is fucking something over that they have no right fucking over. And you can use, death of the author, but the problem is death of the author is an intellectual solution to a moral problem. Death of the author is just what you use if you want to engage with a text, not if you want to proceed with a moral standard for yourself. This is just, like, it seems so relevant. And I mean, you can say to, like, everything with, Harry Potter, you can say, like, boycott the video game. No one fucking did that. It made a bunch of money. Yeah. You can be like, no one wants the HBO Max show, but they're going to make it, and it's probably going to get a ton of views. And it's like, and it can seem so frustrating. I was talking about this with someone the other day, where it's like, that's just an unrealistic solution. Just be like, boycott Harry Potter. It's not just her. It's like, now you have, like, game developers and whatever, and you have other people that are in charge of it, and it's unrealistic to just say, like, hey, don't do this. And I'm like, trans activists ask us for so little. They really do. They ask us to respect their pronouns and to stick up for them. And if we can't even do a boycott properly, what are we, fucking made of jelly? Do we have no spines at all? Yeah. Like, you can't even avoid one thing. Just buy the movies secondhand and watch them in the comfort and privacy of your own home. No one's telling you that you can't enjoy Harry Potter anymore, but just fucking do it quietly. Yeah. No, people love to think that they can absolve themselves from any, like, moral responsibility, because they're like, well, no one else is doing it. Yeah. They're like, well, me as one person, like, boycotting the series isn't going to do anything if everyone else does it. And it's like, okay, then, like, what is the difference? What is the difference if one less person? Because the thing is, it's like, well, then maybe you can talk to your friends who are interested in it, and you're like, oh no, I'm not going to watch that. Like, here's the thing. You just need to bully people Bring bullying back.
Bring bullying back. You just need to be like, oh, what fucking loser would watch the new Harry Potter series?
Make them ashamed.
Yeah, shame them.
Shame them.
Stone them. No, I'm
shame. Shame.
Bring back public shamings.
Yeah.
Where has society gone? But it's like, you as one person, like, this is like not a great example, but I guess I'm pescatarian now. I do eat fish, but I was vegetarian for like 5 years. I did it for like environmental reasons. And a lot of older people would always be like, well, it's just like like you're just one person. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not making that big of an impact. You're just one person. But it's like, if every single person thought that way, nothing would get done. Literally nothing would get done if every single person was like, well, I'm just one person. Because it takes one person, and then it takes another person, and then it takes another person. Like, it's a collective effort, and you should be a part of that collective if it's something that like you morally agree with. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the end of that. I think again, it's a very nuanced topic, where if we're taking out like moral dilemmas of like creators and we're just talking about works in general of like whether their lives influence it or not, I do think it's a twofold thing, right? Where it's like, yes, the author's influence absolutely goes into their work. Of course it does. You'd like have to be fucking stupid to not think that. But at the same time, like, your own influence is going to, or like your own lives and whatnot is going to influence the way that you interpret a work.
Yep.
And that is also going to impact, how you consume something. But when it comes to problematic authors and artists, like the ones that we've talked about, like, that separation becomes honestly less complicated, I would say, because it's just like, oh shit, like, they are gaining from my like acknowledgement of this work and from my enjoyment of this work or whatever, and through those gains they are able to expand their platform and speak on problematic things that I morally disagree with. Like, I feel like that makes it less complicated. It's like, okay, then just don't support them. Like, you can acknowledge, here's the thing with separating art from an artist. I can acknowledge that Kanye is like a good music producer. Like, he's a talented music producer. He's also, in my opinion, a horrible fucking person.
He was on my shit list since the Taylor Swift VMAs, and he's only remained shittier as the years go on. I've never seen a single clip of Kanye West where I'm like, he's changed my mind.
Yeah.
He's good.
And it's like, I can acknowledge that both of those things can be true, while also being like, yeah, I'm not going to give him a fucking platform just because he makes like decent music. There are tons of people who make really great music who don't say shit that he does and who don't platform themselves the way that he does. Like, it's just, I feel like people try and make it this like complicated thing, and like, it's just really not.
Yeah. And I get it. Like, in a perfect world, I would just like the things that I like and not care where it comes from. And I might be happier doing that, genuinely. But just like living in willful ignorance seems more cruel to me. Just like knowing that you're doing something wrong, but you would rather not sacrifice anything at the expense of just living like your most, like, I don't want to say happiest, but like most, whatever. You don't want to sacrifice anything. And you hear that your favorite person has like that made something that you love has done something bad, you go, well, I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that, and then I'm just gonna keep streaming. And then people are like, hey, by the way, like, they're causing active harm. It's not just like a one and done, like, your favorite so and so was accused of sexual assault and whatever. It's like, hey, your so and so is a fucking Nazi and might be running for president and might be one of the most leading like transphobic voices in the world right now. And it gets harder for you to justify that to yourself. And I get it. That's not fair. But you don't get mad at the people telling you to stop. Get mad at the person who put you in that position in the first place.
Yeah.
I would give anything to just not to think about Harry Potter that way. But I can't, because it's in there. And I can't not take it out. It's like the same death of the author principle. Only works in theory, never in practice. Once I hear all that shit, I can't unpeel that from her world. That's who she is. And the way that she feels about people that are different, believe it or not, are kind of sprinkled in Harry Potter. Has she fucking lost the plot and is now like convinced that the bad guys that she wrote are not the people that she is associating herself with, and instead are the people that she is now putting the blame on. Yes, she has lost the plot, but like you were saying earlier, but I think even like last episode, this shit doesn't come completely out of nowhere. I've never been completely blindsided by something, except maybe Ned from the Try Guys cheating on his wife. I was blindsided by that one, but usually, I mean, there's a shock, and then you look back at their body of work and you go, shit.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
It's like the signs were there,
and I just didn't see it because I didn't have that context.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This was a good one. This was an interesting one.
What if it was a really quiet one?
Yeah. Let's pray. Let's pray that the audio is okay. We'll see. We'll see. And hopefully next time I can get it figured out, because I literally, like, guys, I restarted my computer like 2 times. I unplugged, replugged everything. I like restarted the apps multiple times. I don't know what is happening. So hopefully the audio works. Oh, and also if you're watching the YouTube video, I don't have headphones in because I left my headphones at home.
It's been a shit show this morning.
Yeah, so we're just holding it together with a Band-Aid and praying that it works. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Maybe this never gets published.
I wish I had more concrete answers for you, because it's something that I'm also struggling with. But just like, honestly, people should feel shame more.
Yeah.
I feel like the internet has made us shameless. Bring back shame.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
bring back shame.
Yeah, I think everyone could use a good shaming every once in a while, because sometimes and the thing is, you leave your fucking ego at the door. I feel like I say that all the time. People have too big of egos, and it's like sometimes it's okay to acknowledge that like you fucked up, or to acknowledge like, oh shit, yeah, this person who I've been supporting actually does suck. And you know what you do? You stop supporting them.
Yeah.
Like, it's really that easy. And instead of being like, oh, well, but I've already been supporting them, so I'm just going to ignore this.
I'm in too deep now. No,
Yeah.
you're not. Just illegal. Just pirate. Be a pirate. This is pro-piracy. That's it from me, love.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.